If you haven't checked this out yet, definitely encourage you to check it out. It's a free educational resource for learning how to run and operate a subscription business as efficiently as possible. We've got videos, we've got these webinars like the one you're in right now, and we've got a lot of cool content from customer acquisition stuff to shipping and fulfillment to customer service and so much more. This is also where this webinar that we're doing right now will live. So if you go to the video section, you'll be able to see that here. And like I said, also on our YouTube channel. Also, if you're not engaged with us on Facebook, please come and check out Subscription School's Facebook page and join our Facebook group. We have a private Facebook group called Subscription School, so you have to find it in the closed group and then request to be allowed in. But if you go ahead and give me a request, we'll drop you in this group. There's almost 900 people, almost 1,000 people at this point in this group, and we've been around for about 2 months with this new group, and it's crazy. I mean, if you've got questions, if you've got feedback you want to get, if you just want to engage with other people doing these types of businesses, and there's a lot of value in doing that, this is a great place to do it. It's a really awesome community of a lot of really determined, hardworking people who are trying to help each other be more successful. So please join that group and check out our Facebook page. So let's go ahead and start this off. I see we've got a couple of questions in here. Let me just make sure that everybody can hear me correctly. Okay, sweet. So it looks like we've got a couple of questions coming in. Jeff just mentioned that group is a lifesaver. I hear you, Jeff. That's an awesome group. You guys are all doing, it's better than I ever could have imagined. But let's go ahead and kick this off. So today, we're talking about custom packaging. So that's going to be the focus of our topic today. We're going to leave about 20 minutes at the end for Q&A, maybe a little bit more. If you guys got a lot of questions, I'm happy to go over to answer your questions. But it's really going to be focusing on two parts of this. I'm going to talk about the design and the kind of the fundamental branding elements of doing custom packaging kind of in the first part of the webinar. I'm not going to really focus on actually holding the pen during design. So we're not going to be talking about how to, really work through things in Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that. But we will chat a little bit about it. And if you do have questions about that stuff, you can post them there, and I'm happy to go more in depth with it at the end of the webinar. It's really just going to be on some basic understanding of how to get this whole process done. The second part's going to be about how to place an order, minimums, pricing, understanding how printing works. Figure out what the most cost-effective solution is. How can you do cool things without adding more cost? And so we're going to talk about that as the second half. And so with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this. Okay. What I'll do first is just to make sure all you guys are here with me. Let me ask you this before we really go into everything. I'm gonna ask you a question just to kick this thing off. Is what's the hardest part of creating packaging for you? And so I want to know is it a big general, just kind of like tackling this huge feat, or is it going down to just affording it, or just kind of finding a manufacturer and placing an order? Okay, I'll let this up here just for a couple more moments. Okay. So let me go ahead and just share these results with you. It seems like a lot of you are just confused about how to go about this whole process. So hopefully today you guys will walk away with this with a greater understanding. I see that the second biggest group is people who are afraid of affording it. I'm going to give you guys some specific tips at the end of the webinar, specifically about how you can afford this month one. We don't really, there's a whole topic kind of behind that question of affording it, and it's a topic of another webinar, but I'll definitely speak to that, since it seems like there's a lot of you who are kind of worried about that. And for the rest of you, creating design, determining price, placing an order, this stuff will be a cakewalk, hopefully, for you by the end of this webinar today. Okay, so let's jump into this here. All right, so how to create custom packaging. Presented by me, Jesse Richardson. I forgot to introduce myself earlier on. My website is jesserichardson.com. This is me. It's my headshot, you could say. And here are some of my projects. The current one I'm working on is called Prosperly. I've founded other companies called Conscious Box, Escape Monthly, Verbal Box, Organic Soul. I've done a couple other projects in addition to that, some actual products that I've created. But most applicable is all these. Currently, I'm just working on Prosperly and Subscription School in the bottom left with Cratejoy. And Cratejoy, if you don't know, I imagine most of you probably do know, they build the software for subscription businesses. So they make it easy for anybody to start a subscription business of any type. And Subscription School is our educational effort to really help guide people who are working in this pretty new industry of consumer packaged goods, that is subscription boxes. Okay, so the overview of today. We're going to talk about some pros and cons of custom packaging. We're going to be looking at the early steps, design, using the box. Like I said, we'll be talking about placing and timing an order. We'll be giving some alternatives to custom boxes, some examples of what alternatives could look like. I'll chat about that a little bit since I know that's kind of a big question, is what can I do besides placing this big box order? And then I'll give you some resources. Okay. Oh, going too far back there. All right, part one is the process and why. So the process of ordering packaging is a several-step process. There's a couple things that you'll be tackling and kind of hurdles you'll be jumping over to go from the desire to get packaging to actually having packaging in your hand. What that looks like is first off deciding what your packaging is going to be. Is it going to be a box? Is it going to be a bag? Is it going to be an envelope? Is it going to be a rigid mailer? Is it going to be something else? Once you've kind of figured out what you know, kind of how you want to look like or what form you want it to be in, then the next step is really figuring out how to take that form and marry it to your brand. I like to call it marrying it to your brand because it should really be unified. It should really feel like the same cohesive experience that you get from going to, for example, from a Facebook ad to a website to getting the product. All those things should be identifiably related. They should all be a part of a unified customer experience that feels like it's all a part of one brand kind of experience. You know, one good example of how to marry something to your brand is to use a color throughout the whole process. So you use orange in this Facebook ad, you use orange on your website, and then you use orange boxes. That's something that that's how I've kind of married some of my branding and my packaging to my online presence and advertisements and that type of thing. Outside of once you've got that married to your brand, you have to think about it also pretty strategically. So how do you make the most of the packaging as a functional piece of material? Once you've kind of laid out a plan to create a packaging and create action items almost behind your packaging, then it comes down to figuring how to place your order and then making sure you're coordinating it with when you actually need packaging, when budget's going to be taken out, and that type of thing. So, you know, we kind of talked about earlier, we're going to look at the pros and cons of custom packaging. We're not going to go super deep into alternatives right now. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. But I just want to cover this just to kind of touch base on it kind of before we kick it off into the decision of actually going with custom packaging. So it seems like a no-brainer because everybody thinks like, oh, I want a custom box. Like, obviously, who doesn't want one? But why should we use it and why shouldn't we use it depending on our stage of our business? Why you should use it, I think it's pretty clear. I think it superpowers your brand. You get better sales. You get brand reinforcement. You can build call to actions onto that packaging. It makes you seem more professional. In this top photo here, you can see, you know, this orange box at the top with all of its products. It feels like, you know, it feels like a more wholesome experience to the customer when they're actually getting something that they want to take a picture of. You know, I think you'd be surprised a lot of times when it's not a custom box, a lot of people just aren't super jazzed about taking unboxing photos with it. And so you just see the products in box reviews and you just see, you know, what you actually put in your box and not actually the box itself. And so by getting a custom box, you get the opportunity to become kind of like a part of the eye candy of this experience. And then that is great for a lot of things, like that means people will be seeing your brand when they look at these pictures on social media and that type of thing. So all these things kind of superpower your brand to be more effective at what it does best, right? Sell a great product. Now, why should you hold off? If you really can't do custom packaging, what would those reasons be? Number one is cost. You know, like 26% of you just mentioned, we're worried about actually being able to afford the packaging in the first place. I think that's really important, and like I said, we'll chat a little bit about that at the end. besides that, time and effort. I mean, it's not super easy to go ahead and create new great custom packaging. It's just not. Anybody that tells you it's super easy is they either are really great at it or they're lying. It's definitely a difficult thing to do. It's up there with me making a great website almost. And the other reason I want to hold off is alternatives exist. And here's one great example of an alternative, which is the second photo here. I love Nomad Coffee Club, not just because they have really good coffee, but because their packaging, I think, is deceptively simple. It is. It looks like a really nice brand. If you can, so you can see there's a brown craft coffee bag that has a black stamp on it, and then what it comes in is a perfectly sized cardboard box mailer. I mean that bag of coffee fits in that box, and then they have this really cool wax stamp that they put on top of it, and it's all brown craft looking. You know, it's all the same kind of rustic feel. It makes it feel like it's a full brand experience almost without having to go the whole distance of getting custom packaging made and buy a bunch of stuff. And I think they've done a really good job with that. And I like how I think it fits the brand so well. Maybe because it's coffee, and it's kind of a crafty feeling thing. But there could be ways with other niches that you can identify some simpler form of packaging that still feels really cohesive with your product experience, like we were talking about earlier. So before we go into part two, let me just make sure we don't have any questions coming up yet. Okay, it looks like we're good so far. We'll keep pushing forward before answering these. All right, part two, early steps. So now that we've made the decision, let's say, to go ahead and do custom packaging, let's really figure out how it works and figure out how to choose our packaging and jump into the design section of the webinar. I think it's really useful early on to actually understand how custom packaging works. And when I say how it works, I mean literally how it's created. I think we think of custom packaging and it's easy to think to ourselves, well, that's like some magical factory where they create some beautiful piece of packaging, and I don't really know what the different options are. I know that they're called different things, but they cost different things, but I'm not really sure what it looks like. So let's jump into that. Let's define these things really quickly. If you've already started talking with box manufacturers, you've probably already heard some of these words, and so hopefully you've kind of, if you aren't sure what these things are, you'll definitely be sure after this. So the first one's flexographic, and there's three. Let me say that there's three primary ways to create custom packaging. There are other ways, but these are the three big ways: flexographic, litho label, and digital printing. So we'll start off with flexographic. Flexographic is probably the most cost-effective for, I should say, not small orders like it says here on the slide, but like small, medium orders. So when we're talking about like 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, like those small to medium-sized orders, flexographic is most likely the most cost-effective. Litho label is a little bit more expensive, but it evens out around that 3,000 to 5,000 mark. It starts to become just as expensive as flexographic printing does. Digital is a lot more expensive, but really good for much, much smaller runs. And I mean like runs of 10, 20, 30 boxes. It's going to be like, $6, $7, $8 a box probably. But if you only need 20, you're spending $8 a box, you're only spending $160 versus having to spend, $600 for, 400 boxes, or if it's like $1.50 or something like that for flexographic printing. So it's much cheaper in a sense. Digital is for the smaller orders. You can save money, but the amount per box you're spending is I find to be kind of exorbitantly expensive. Now, the way to kind of understand how these things actually work is actually pretty simple. They're all actually very simple mechanisms of printing. Flexographic, the way I like to explain it, it's like a giant rubber stamp. So if you go to your manufacturer facility and you say, hey, let me go check out my flexographic printing happen, what you'll see is it's this big machine, not unlike the one you see on your screen. That's actually, I believe, a digital printer. But it's this big machine, and on one side it sucks in the cardboard, right? And it shoots this cardboard down this line, and rolling down this line is this giant kind of like, rolling wheel. And on the wheel is your printing plate. And the printing plate, essentially what it is it's a long strip of rubber that's been kind of wrapped around this wheel. And so as the cardboard goes under and the wheel's rotating, it's rotating the stamp on. It's kind of rolling the stamp on. And it's a giant piece of rubber. It literally is a giant rubber stamp. But it's a little bit more sophisticated, obviously, and a little bit more expensive tools when you're going to creating them. Litho-label is kind of like wallpaper, is how I think about it. Litho-label is when you have your corrugated box and the manufacturer will run a thin liner over the corrugated box, basically. This is great because you can get much higher quality design, a lot better detail, a lot cleaner printing than with flexographic, because it's not a giant rubber stamp anymore. You know, this has been put through a printer and it's on a piece of paper that's then lining the box, and so it's much higher quality. Example of a litho-label box would be, for a long time, Birchbox. I'm not sure if they do it anymore. They were doing litho labels on their boxes where it was a outer shipping box and the inner box had a nice floral pattern on it or something like that. Or some cool design, and what that was probably litho-label, where they ran a sheet, you know, just like wallpaper over the edges of their box. Digital is kind of like litho-label in the sense that you can have really high quality designs, but unlike layering wallpaper on, this is like literally using like a laser jet printer almost. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's basically like a digital printer that you have at home. And so that cardboard gets still sucked through the machine. But here, you know, there's an inkjet sprayers, and they're mixing colors, and it's very precise, and it's to a very specific kind of measurement. It's a little bit more sophisticated than flexographic, where it's just that big rolling, you know, wheel of rubber. So that's how each one of those things work: a big rubber stamp, wallpaper, and a standard inkjet printer that you have at home. Now, turn those things all into industrial-sized machines, and that's what you're getting when you are working through an order with the box manufacturer. So what about the hidden costs? All three of these things are going to cost you one thing called a die. A die is like a big pair of scissors almost. They have plain sheets of cardboard, right, that are just super long sheets of cardboard, totally square. When you choose your box size, they'll get this die, and then what they'll do is they'll run it through another machine, and this die will kind of slap down on your cardboard and chop out your shape, right? And the nice thing about a die is a lot of times you can get a box manufacturer who has a bunch of stock sizes, and that's good because then you don't have to buy a die yourself. If you want to have a custom sized box or a custom shaped box, or there's something super custom about it, and it has to be this very specific way, then you probably have to make your own die plate. Flexographic also requires what's called a printing plate. So remember, flexographic's the big rubber stamp. The printing plate is that big rubber stamp. It's got to be made. I mean, with litho-label and with digital, they don't actually need anything else besides those, you know, the ink material for digital and the paper material and the printing stuff for litho-label. With flexographic, you've got to create that giant rubber stamp with your custom design on it. There's not going to be any stock designs that you're going to want to use if you want to have your own custom labels and stuff on it, because all those printing plates, they're all 100% unique each time. Whereas with, you know, digital, you can plug in whatever design you want to the machine, and it'll shoot out whatever it is. You don't have to change any parts in there. So flexographic requires that printing plate as well. Part two, let's look at some different types of packaging here, because I don't want you to think that you only have to do a custom box. It could be a lot of other different types of custom things. So on the top left, we have 4-5 Club. This is a black bubble mailer, and then they wrap their clothes. 4-5 Club is like a apparel subscription. They wrap their clothes in a custom tissue paper, and so their packaging isn't super sophisticated necessarily on the outside. It's just a black bubble mailer. It's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't really pop out necessarily. It's not as bright as a bright orange box like the one in the center right. It's a little bit more subtle, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But when you open the bag, you get the custom tissue paper, the custom sticker holding everything together. And so it's a little bit, the branding experience almost lives inside the packaging there. One that is the opposite of that, but similar, is Pipsticks. And so Pipsticks is a sticker subscription. I think their packaging is really clever. It's like this almost see-through envelope, and then it allows you to see a bunch of cool designs and stickers that they have inside the envelope. And that's what you're seeing in the top center left. And it's just a little envelope subscription with different stickers and postcards and stuff like that. Center right, that's the subscription I currently run. That is a kind of, I don't want to say a standard, but when I think custom subscription box packaging, that's kind of what you're looking at there. Is it's a corrugated box done with flexographic printing. To the right of that is Box of Style. It's a really high-end subscription box. They do a couple of cool things. They've got the custom tissue paper in there, and then they have a custom black box that has that litho label used on it. And if you could tell, if you look closely, zoom up on the the box of style part, you can see that there's this texture to it. And the litho label that they used is kind of like it's like a thicker, kind of bumpy textured litho label, and it creates this kind of this textured experience, kind of appearance to the box, and it makes it look really high end. And then the box of style is in like this silver, flat, kind of shiny printed material, and so it kind of pops out from that kind of grainy blackness. And so that's like a $150 box, I believe. I think it's quarterly. So it's a really high end experience, but it kind of gives you a sense of how you can use litho label in a creative way versus that flexographic printing. Bottom left, we have some rigid mailers. So these are just like manila envelopes almost. Not manila envelopes, but there's kind of like the bubble mailer, except without bubbles. It's kind of like this harder cardboard, and I think you can even have those padded as well with bubbles. In the bottom center, there's this. I think this is an interesting form of packaging. It's also a box that uses corrugated box and probably flexographic printing, but it's like this really thin one, almost like magazine width. And inside that is like different collectibles and stuff like that. And it's kind of a cool viewing window that they built into it. And it's an interesting design. And the bottom right there is a Conscious Box. And a Conscious Box, an old version of it, we used to have two boxes. One was a corrugated outer box, and then the center one was a paperboard box with this window of consciousness. And if you see in that bottom right one, there's like this red flower petals in that little diamond. That was actually the back of a postcard. And so if you took that postcard out, that window would be open. And so each month we had a new theme and a new picture. We'd tape that to the inside of that paper mailer, of that paperboard box, and you'd see the next photo before you open the box. It kind of got you excited. So those are some different ways to approach packaging. How you decide which one works for your brand? Definitely the contents. Think about what you'll be shipping. Think about how fragile they are. What kind of makes sense is your name. Does your name have the word box in it, for example? Because then you should probably use a box. If your name has the word bag in it, maybe you should use like a bubble mailer. But what makes sense with your brand? Like if you think about the niche and you think about what you're selling customers, you get this discovery of X products. What makes sense for that? What do those products normally come in? What parts of that niche do you think of in terms of physical packaging wise? Like for example, there's a subscription called Mantree, and it's like manly food. And so they thought to themselves, well, manly food, how can we make it feel manly? They have a really plain brown corrugated box that's their outer box, and inside it's a wooden crate. That might be a little bit extreme for those of us who are just starting out, but it was a good way to capture that niche. They've got this old rustic wood box full of manly food products. So their custom packaging really existed inside of a shipping box. And that made sense for their brand. But most of all, keep in mind of size. And I say that's most important because you can kind of play with the other ones, size of your products, how fragile they are, what makes sense for your brand. You can probably find some different solutions for that with different types of packaging. But regardless of what type of packaging you're choosing, whether it's litho label, box, or a certain type of bubble mailer, keep in mind how big that packaging is going to be, because that'll affect something that will affect your business forever, which is shipping prices. And so if you're using a box, keep in mind that you have USPS shipping cubic tiers with Cratejoy. When you buy postage for your customers, it goes through a USPS cubic shipping kind of purchaser, and you piggyback on a contract that allows you to have better rates, but is more related to size of box versus weight of the box. And we'll talk about a little bit more about USPS cubic stuff in a second here. Also, if it's light enough, it could be first-class mail. So if you are doing something that's not fragile and is kind of a small to medium size, then maybe a bubble mailer makes the most sense because it's much lighter than a box, and you can get under 14 ounces, and you can mail everything first class and save $3 on shipping. So think about that type of thing. And if you want to get a better sense of shipping cost, check out this link, start.cratejoy.com/power shipping price calculator, and each word has a dash in between it there. And if we were to click that, it would take you to this thing, and you can take a peek at how shipping is kind of projected. and kind of based on what your box, you can see here width, length, height, weight, and your origin zip code, and you can kind of see what would my shipping look like if I decided to go with a small box and I wanted to ship it to Alaska or something like that. So, and you know that you could use a small box because you're never going to have an item over 5 inches long and blah, 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 blah. So once you've kind of gone through that process and you want to think more about how this relates to my shipping, check out this calculator. And there's also a non-power version of this too that you can access. Looks like we got a couple good questions in here. I'm going to answer just a few of them right now because we just started talking about it. Rose said, is flexographic or digital better for small orders? Let me just put this right here. Small to medium orders. I mean, flexographic is always going to probably be your most cost-effective, Rose, in terms of price per unit. But if you only need 20 boxes, then I wouldn't suggest ordering 1,000 flexographic printed boxes, because even though those boxes will be cheaper per unit, if you don't have the $1,500 to put that order in, then it doesn't really make sense. So if you only need like very, very, very few boxes, and I mean like less than, if you want to place an order for less than 500 boxes, I imagine that you're probably going to need to do a digital printing for it. And if you're seriously considering doing custom boxes at that sized order, I would say wait, get enough budget for 1,000, and just do flexographic, because they're both small orders. That's the kind of thing to realize, I guess, Rose, is that ordering 1,000 boxes and ordering 100 boxes are both very small in terms of a manufacturer size. So if you really only need a handful, a couple dozen at a time, then do digital. If you're ready to make the commitment and have a couple hundred boxes on stock, then use flexographic. And if you're ready to do a lot, if you're ordering 5,000 boxes, then you can start looking at litho labels being competitively priced to flexographic. And like I said, the nice thing about that is even if you're paying basically the same price, you can get higher detail and extra cool features like textured stuff and other types of things that make it more interesting than just plain old flexographic. Rose also asked another good question here. Is it a lot more if you use more than one color? So Rose, the kind of thing to keep in mind, and everybody, the kind of the thing to keep in mind here about using extra colors with flexographic printing is that each color is going to require a new printing plate. Because keep in mind, it's a giant rubber stamp. So if you want to have 2 or 3 different types of colors, like for example, this bottom box we can see it has black and red. Those are the 2 colors used on the box because the brown is the craft, just a brown mailer. They had to use 2 printing plates for this. And so they ran the box through once, got all the black ink on, and they ran the box through a second time, got all the red ink on, and now the box is done. So you would have to buy another plate. A plate can cost about $500 to $700. Let me just add this in here so you guys can see. $500 to $700. A die, I think it costs around $500. It really depends on the size, in both cases, but roughly, I think you can kind of estimate that each one of these things is probably going to cost $500 to $700. So, Rose, to answer your question, it doesn't add a lot more cost. You only have to buy that printing plate once in your life, but it does add cost for sure. Okay. Okay, let's jump into this. Oh, looks like we got one more question related to shipping from Nicole that we just talked about. So let's just talk about this really quick. Nicole says, what if we have a shipping contract with a UPS, or if our specific product requires UPS shipping? Then Nicole, you can still totally use Cratejoy. I would just suggest buying postage through another partner of ours, like ShipStation, or using another third-party shipper like Pirate Ship or something like that. If you don't want to if you've got to use a very specific type of shipping, then I would suggest getting ShipStation or something else like that to manage your shipments, and not managing your shipments through Cratejoy. Because I don't think you can choose your carrier when you print your postage inside the Cratejoy platform. To answer your question, okay, let's keep pushing through this here. So part 2 is design. Okay. One thing I want to point out right now is that on the right-hand side in the GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see the handouts section. You should see 2 handouts there. Both of them say sample box 11.8 / 7.5 by 8 by 4, and then another one says 8 by 6 by 3.5. Those are 2 PDFs that are box designs. And so if you look on the page here, you can see there's a box design on the right-hand side. This is an outline of how you get a PDF basically from a box manufacturer that looks like this, and then you put all your designs on top of this and you send it back to them and they turn it into a design file. If you want to start playing around with this and jumping into design, download one or two of those PDFs. So you might wonder why Jesse, do we have such specific sizes in these PDFs? These two sizes are maxed out for cubic sizing. So when I say maxed out, I mean the smaller box, 8x6 and 3.5, is as big as you can get and still stay in the cubic 0.1 tier. That's a whole different pricing tier than 0.2. It's not much different because I just changed the rates, but it is different. It is cheaper. So with the above one, that's basically maxed out for cubic 0.2. So it's it's the biggest box you can possibly have and still be in the cubic 0.2 range. Which, if you had added one more inch to that bigger box, you'd be in cubic 0.3 and you'd be paying $2 or $3 more per zone for your box to be shipped. And so I suggest working with these two sizes, since I think 90% of subscription boxes will be within these two sizes. I made that statistic up right now. I'm not sure if 90% would be, but I'm going to go ahead and say that. But really, I think most subscription boxes will be probably within the cubic 0.1 or 0.2 shipping size. So if you want to get kind of get your feet wet, then these are two good designs. And Dina just asked me here, she's like, these are PDF files. Can you import them into a program like Illustrator, or do we need to recreate in the software and add our own design? No, Dina, you can pull and drop them right into Illustrator. I had a PDF, I dropped it in Illustrator, put on my designs, and sent it to my box manufacturer, and they turned it into a design file myself. If you ask for PDFs from or if you ask for design samples from a box manufacturer, they're probably going to give you PDF files unless you ask for something else. So you can totally, absolutely use these in your Illustrator file. Keep in mind though, Dina, if you're going to do inside and outside, you'll need to pull these designs in twice, because you want to have two boxes sitting next to each other in an Illustrator file, because one's going to be the outside and one's going to be the inside. So you should have two boxes in your one file. Okay, so let's go back to present this. So design's a multi-step process. It's intensive. It's super freaking hard. You need to execute on several moving parts here. You got to choose a size. We kind of just went over that. And you need to have a blueprint. That's what we see on the right. Now you guys all have one. You need to choose your colors, and then determine if you're going to be going with digital or flexographic printing. You want to make that decision pretty early on, because that's going to affect how you can print on your box. If you want to have very specific small designs, you need to make the decision early on that you're going to be going litho label or digital printing. So if you're not going to be that, and you're kind of okay with this kind of natural bleed to things, then flexographic is going to be okay, because it's a big rubber stamp. You're okay with that. It's going to kind of lend to your handmade feel, I guess, if that's what you're thinking. So determine how you're going to print your box before you start your design, because that heavily impacts the design process. Then get a concept. Figure out what you want this box to look like. Is it going to be a flood coat? Is it going to be all one color? Is it going to have, a scene on it? Is it going to have some, unique message that's part of your niche that's kind of driving the design? Is there going to be some type of symbology on your box that's related to your niche? Is it going to be super simple? Is it going to be very complex? Is it going to be a pattern? You can see there's lots of different questions and ways to approach the concept of your box, and that's something that you want to think about early on. And I would suggest taking those PDFs that you guys just downloaded, printing them out on a piece of paper, and drawing on them. Like a freehand draw. Like, you don't need to be jumping in an Illustrator file right away. Just pull out a pencil and pretend like you're an artist for a second. And if you are an artist, you'll do well at this. If you're like me, when I did my first custom box design by myself, I was not an artist, and it was really difficult. And I just took a pencil and I started drawing on my page, and I just tried to get a feel for how I wanted the concept to come together actually on paper. And then you need to choose a program and get technically proficient with it. InDesign or Illustrator, you can use, there's a couple different programs that you can use. I used InDesign to design my box. InDesign is for print, and so I went with InDesign because it was it seemed like the one that made the most sense to me. I think a lot of people also use Illustrator. I might have even used both of them at some point, but I wonder if there's actually a an example file I could show you guys in Illustrator. It looks like I don't really have one, and I can show you right now. Okay, but whatever program you are working in, get proficient at it. And the way that you get proficient at a program is to do a couple things. Number one, it is to practice, practice, practice. Like about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I had stepped inside Photoshop probably a dozen times. And the dozen times I was doing that, it did not look good. Let me just say that. 2 years ago, though, I made the conscious decision. I said, "Listen, like I need to get good, or at least decent at design, so I can do things myself, and I don't have to worry about getting a designer all the time." What I did was I practiced all the time. I made a lot of terrible-looking things, and I got a lot of feedback on those things. And then I watched a ton of YouTube videos, how-to videos, how to make, how to adjust lines, how to, impose images on things, how to work different tools. Using all those things is what will actually get you really good at a hard program like Adobe InDesign or something like that. And by using those programs, you get so much more control of your design than using something else. Dina actually just mentioned the Packlane website is a good resource to lay out an initial design and then send the image link to our designer, and then he's transferring it to a template. So Packlane is I believe they just do digital printing. Which, if that's true, I don't know if you know that if that's true or not, Dina. I think they just do digital printing. They might do flexographic as well, but they have a program where you can customize a box, and you can kind of see how box pricing works out with them. This must be digital. These prices are very, very high, but you can lay out an initial design there. Oh yeah. Yep, Dina says, I think just digital, and that's the tool. But play around with it, and if you want to play around with that, and then pass it off to a designer, I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Dina, for suggesting that. I'm going to put this in this presentation for next time. I think it's a really good idea. If you don't want to do that, and you don't have a designer you can work with, and you don't have a budget for it, or whatever the case, you can do it on your own, and I sincerely mean that. I've taken drawing classes since I've been a little kid, and I'm just not an artist. I don't know what it is. I can't do it. And it took me weeks and weeks and weeks to get to a place where I felt like I actually had a decent design of something. And here's an example. I guess you kind of have to tilt your head to see this. But these are the iterations I went over when I was creating my first box. So you can just take a look here. You can see the top left of it, or the I guess kind of the bottom left if you're tilting your head, the step one ideation of colors. You can just kind of go from left to right and then down, and then left to right and then down, left to right and then down, and you can see how the design kind of changed over time. So you can see the first time I kind of started planning out the way it was going to look, I was just trying to choose colors. You can see my lines weren't even in line with the box shape. I was just trying to draw like a big square on it, and I literally save these things at each step because I want to see how it was changing. So I had this ideation of colors. The next one, you can see I'm trying to use a little pattern in the box. You can see I've kind of like got my, if you look at the step 2 version 1, if you look at the first white box in the top, and you can see it's like not even like slanted correctly. There's like this weird like kind of slant to it right there, and so you just very, very shoddy work at this point. Version 3, I'm still playing with a different design. I'm just kind of playing with some text now on the back, some different types of trees. I'm playing with different font faces. Step 4, basically the same thing, a little bit different, kind of more lines, a slightly different orange color, a kind of a banner on it. It still looks just terrible at this point. Version 4, I start to get a little bit better. I know that I want to have a pattern on it, but I want to minimize that pattern within these little sidelines. I kind of get the idea to have a circle thing on the front. Inside, still just a basic pattern with another white box. I went back to the white box. And then step 6, it starts to really take shape. At this point, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Let me step back for a second. This just doesn't look good. What if on the inside of the box, I left it completely white, and then I somehow accented that inside of the box with something cool? And during the early photo shoots, when I was thinking about branding, I was thinking that sunflowers really kind of felt like a good brand kind of iconography for this box idea because it's a natural, eco-healthy subscription, and it just felt cool to me at the time. I was kind of just a bit inspired by it. So you can see I start to play around with this, and I start to try to build out an idea for the next iteration of designs. Well, the next time I did the designs, is step 7 was like when I went through for like a 16-hour period, and I just was like designing my box like for 2 days straight, and it totally came full circle at this point. And so you can see this is now switched around, so that the inner box is now on the bottom and the outer box is on the right, or excuse me, on the top. And you can see I finally got the right shape of the box. And I had the outer box completed. I've got my little scene finished here, my text finished. I've got a cool kind of sunflower design on the outer box, a place for my shipping label on the top. It looks a little bit cleaner, a little bit bigger than my last version. The inner box is much different now. I have these 2 sunflowers, but I also have some other scenes. I've got some little foxes in the corner. I've got this tree growing up that's going to hold the place card that I put in the box each month. I have a little 1, 2, 3 CTA, and you can kind of see this a little bit clearer here. Where how this design kind of came together. And let me just see. I'm just going to do this. I'll just make it really big so you guys can see what that looked like. You know, I have the sunflowers here, and then this is where I put a place card right here. This little 5x7 place card that I sticky dot into this box. The 1, 2, 3, and so you can see like that process that I just described to you. Took me a very long time. This took me probably 2.5 months, and I was playing this for a very long time. Number 1, I was learning how to use the tool, but number 2, I was really figuring out how to do design. If you look at this first box here, and you look at the last box, it looks like it's made by a different person, I think. And I still don't think I'm a great designer, but I really wanted to challenge myself to see if a person who's not a great designer can actually come up with a great piece of packaging. And I think that this could be better, but I'm pretty happy with it. I'm mostly happy with the outcome of the packaging. And you can see this is even a slightly different iteration with the prosperly. There's a sunflower around the O here, and it's a little bit more, it's a little less busy than that last one here. But you can see it's much busier with the sunflowers. If you do your own design, the things that I would kind of impart on you from what I've learned in this process is keep a couple things in mind. Number 1, calls to action. Make your packaging motivate people. Is there a monthly contest? Should they follow you on social media? Should they take a picture of the box? I did this in a few different ways. There's a call to action on the bottom of the box where it says our social media. There's a call to action in the top of the box that says snap a photo, share with us, earn a box. So I have people saying, take a photo, share it with us, and then remember about our referral program, because there's a referral program that we have, and I also mentioned that inside on the postcard each month too. Reinforce your brand, make it feel cohesive. We kind of talked about that before, but you can see I kind of kept this orange color scheme that came from my website, that came from my Facebook ad, etc., that makes the whole brand experience feel cohesive to the customer. It's a part of the same brand that they bought the product from online. Then make it visceral. How can you get customers to feel the box? So one of the things that I did is I took a 5x7 card, and I placed some sticky dots on it, and I placed those sticky dots on the inner flap of the box. So when people open it up, there's a little 5x7 card that looks at them, and they have to peel it off. Like they have to peel this card off the box that's stuck there with sticky dots in order to see the packing list. When they turn around, they can read the packing list. And so I wanted to do that because I wanted to make people engage with my product. I wanted to make people feel like they had to, open the box not only, but also really grab into it, really get into their products. And in addition to that, there's some crinkle paper that's in the box and the products, and it's wrapped in tissue paper. And they kind of have to open that tissue paper back up. So it's a full unboxing experience that they get to do. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Think about your shipping label placement as well. So I placed my shipping label on the top of the box, so it's easy for them just to kind of read. And then on the bottom of the box, I have a message. You can place it on the bottom of the box if you want. You can place it on the side of the box if you want. You can get really creative with where you're actually putting your shipping label. It's totally up to you. And I would just say place it somewhere where it's going to be easy for you to identify for packing in the future. So when you have a big fulfillment warehouse and you've got 10,000 boxes you're doing a month, you know that all your packers are going to do it right because there's this white box for them to put the label on, and you never have to worry about placement issues. So we got a couple more slides. We got about 4 or 5 more slides left here. So I'm going to power through this stuff pretty quickly. Um, so let's look at this here. Part 3, placing an order. First is finding a manufacturer. Go to subscriptionschool.com and go to the services and resources section. You'll see that at the top of the page. Just click resources. Under the right-hand side, there's experts. Go to custom packaging and you can find a bunch of people. You can find Packlane, who Dina mentioned earlier. I got my boxes printed at Northwest Paper Box. I've had my Conscious Box printed at Salazar Packaging. There's a lot of really good packaging solutions that you can access. And if you use Northwest Paper Box or Salazar, tell them that Jesse sent you in to give you the best deal ever. Just kidding. But you can ask them if they want. I'm not sure that they'll know. Part 3, price. So price depends a lot on the type of printing you're doing. Remember, we talked about the 3 different types: flexographic, litho, and digital. For flexographic, if you're doing 1,000 to 2,000 boxes, I'm going to guess that if you're using kind of like a normal box size, it's like maybe a cubic 0.2 box size, then you're probably going to be around the $1 to $1.50 mark. You might be it might be even a little bit lower depending on the size of your box. If it's a smaller box, and if you're only doing maybe inks on one side or something like that. But generally, I think you could probably estimate between about $1 and $1.50. For 2,000 boxes or more, you'll definitely be under $1 a box, I would imagine. It depends. You can do nicer types of cardboard, and you can do different types of thickness and different types of fluting. So thickness relates to fluting, and with fluting, for example, there's a couple different flute sizes that you can do with your box, and I think that right now flute size B and flute size E are kind of the most common. My box, I believe, is flute size E, and so it's a bit thinner, but it's still just as strong. If you want to learn more about that fluting, what I would suggest going to Subscription School, going to packaging and product development. And I did this Q&A sit down with Dennis Salazar from Salazar Packaging. Pull open this guide, search for flute, and you can learn about flute, its thickness of the cardboard. He kind of mentions a different flute. So yeah, B flute's the most standard. E flute is a little bit nicer quality, but it's a different thickness. And so I guess my point is, depending on what you're doing with your flexographic printing, it's probably going to be about this pricing. I think it's a pretty good estimate to walk into this, assume that you should be around this amount. So if you go to a box manufacturer and they're like, oh, for 2,000 boxes, it's going to be $2 a box. It's going to be $3 a box. That person's probably yanking your leg a little bit, and you need to kind of negotiate harder with them. With litho label, it depends if it's full or spot labeling. So full would be all over the place. Spot labeling would be just in one section. So, it's going to be, I would say, I think it's about twice as much as flexographic when it's a lower quantity, like 1,000, 2,000. Once you get to that 3,000, 5,000, it's going to be about the same as flexographic, probably around $1. But before that, it's going to be probably closer to $2.50, $2.75 per box, which is significantly more expensive. It's not a lot more expensive, but it is. It's quite a bit more expensive. It's twice as expensive as flexographic. But like I said, that price evens out once you get to 3,000 to 5,000. Digital, it's going to be like 3 to 5 times more per box. And like I said, I would really just avoid this unless you need it for a couple dozen boxes. I mean, even digital, I believe at some point, maybe around 10,000 starts to get like just as cheap or so as litho and flexographic, maybe just a little bit more. And there are big scale digital machines, but it's like you just don't need that. I mean, if you wanted a digital quality, just use litho labels, and you can get better pricing. So digital just doesn't always make sense for really large orders. There's just other solutions for it. So once you decide to price, you got to place that order. Here's a rough outline of how that's going to work for you. So you determine your price and your packaging. And now's the time. Do you need to negotiate special terms, split payments? Can you pay it over a 3-month period? Then once you figure that stuff out, you're going to submit your design to your manufacturer. They're going to send you a sample, color probably. They're going to send you like a little card with a little stamp on it that shows you the color, how it's going to look, and a design file to approve. And then you'll approve it. Then they'll create your tools. They'll create your die, your printing die, which is that thing that cuts the shape of your cardboard, and they'll also create your printing plate, and that's the stamp that is stamped onto things if you're using flexographic. Then your boxes will be produced. That may take a week. After your boxes are produced, they'll then be delivered to you and you'll use them. So it'll probably take a week or two for delivery. And then, then you'll actually get them and you'll need to store them. So timeline wise, I would say it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for plates and dies to be created. Because that's kind of a back and forth process kind of during design. If you really push them hard to get that stuff created, maybe 2 weeks if they're really fast at it, but they're going to need some time to kind of source their materials and actually put it through this machine and create that tool for you. Probably only a week or two for production if you're doing only 1,000 or so boxes. Like I said, definitely a week for transportation. And then future orders, it's only going to be like 2 weeks for production and transit, because at that point you'll have your design ready. Runs will be done already. You'll probably find out any errors or any bleed problems that you have, you'll kind of figure out how fast or how slow transit is. So you'll be able to estimate that pretty well. That's kind of the process of working through placing an order. One thing I should say before we move on here is just consider fulfillment and manufacturer options. One of the reasons why I love working with Northwest Paper Box in Portland, Oregon, is not only because they're local, but it's also because local for me. It's also because they are fulfillment as well. So they do box printing for me, and they also pack my boxes for me. So I have both things under one roof, which is nice because I never have to freight my boxes anywhere across the country. It saves me a couple $100 per pallet. I can just keep them all in Northwest Paper Box's facility, and they do everything for me. That costs a little bit more money, but it's definitely worth it. So some alternatives. Stickers and stamps are probably the biggest alternatives. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm working on another alternative with Cratejoy for you guys, and it's really, really exciting. It's going to be the biggest and best alternative for custom packaging solutions that has ever existed. Hopefully you guys are excited about it. You should be seeing stuff about it next week or so. I don't want to spoil anything, but you guys are the first ones to know. But the big alternatives are stickers and stamps. So stickers are easy to apply. They're super consistent, obviously, because they're printed, and they're bright, and you can make them totally custom with your design. You can add CTAs to them. They're a great way to add a creative element to your box. Stamps are cheaper. Stickers are probably like, probably $1 per big sticker. Maybe it's like 70 cents if you're only ordering, like a 200 or 300 at a time. I kind of guess it's probably around 50 cents to $1 per sticker. So it's kind of, it rivals almost box printing prices, but it should be a little bit cheaper. Stamps they're harder to apply. Even with a self-inking stamp, which is like that one that you hit your checkbook with, or whatever, your address thing for your envelopes. Even with a self-inking stamp, it's still like you got to push it in just the right amount of pressure. So it creates inconsistencies, but at the same time, it feels kind of cruel and gritty. Cool, I should say, not cruel. It feels gritty. Like we looked at that No Bad Coffee Club. They had a stamp, and I think that looks really good with their brand. Okay, so I think we've gone over a lot of material so far. So at this point, you should be asking yourself, what am I waiting for? You should have a lot of different solutions ahead of you. Do I want custom packaging? Do I want an alternative? What type of custom packaging do I want to have? Do I know what my next steps are? And that kind of takes me to this assignment. So it's Thursday today. Can't believe how quickly this week has gone by. It still feels like Monday to me. But it's Thursday today. By next Thursday, I want you, and I'm going to be calling each one of you up individually and making sure you do this. I'm just kidding. Next Thursday, I want you to have a list of manufacturers to contact with a size and order quantity in mind. So you have 2 sizes right now. Remember, if for some reason you missed the presentation earlier and you're just getting with us, in the handout section, download those sample boxes because those are 2 good sizes to be working with. But if you don't want to use those sizes, determine a size and then determine how many you think you want to order for your first order. So you should have some basic box stuff decided. What's my concept? Remember, we spent a lot of time talking about concept. Is it a color? Is it is it symbols? Is it a specific word? What is it that is driving my design? Get that concept down. give yourself a timeline and say, I want to complete this in 3 weeks. I want to have a design ready in 3 weeks. I think you should give yourself enough time to do a good design. So don't rush it, but get busy on it. And that's an assignment from me to you, and I'm challenging you to do this. So if next Thursday rolls around and you think to yourself, oh, it's Thursday, what was I supposed to do today? And you're like, oh crap, freaking Jesse from Subscription School was hounding all of us to get a design ready and to think about manufacturers. Like, I guess I should do that. I want you to have that thought next Thursday, and to call up Dennis Salazar, call up Northwest Packaging, call up Packlane, call these people up and say, hey, I want to learn more about this thing. I think that's something that you guys could all do in the next week that doesn't require any money and just a little bit of time. So jump on that. We're going to jump in the Q&A session now and answer more of your questions. And I'm going to leave this action item reminders little list up for you so you can kind of just keep in mind of these things. Okay, so Rose says, does LaunchRock allow you to create blog posts? No, they don't, Rose. They do not allow you to create blog posts. Rose also asks, children books are tricky because they vary in size. What's your advice for folks who have products that vary in size? Rose, you got to get a box that's big enough for all your different product sizes. I think if you're doing children books, a really interesting way maybe to do it would be, let's see here, this box. It's like, make it a thin, it's not very tall, but it's like, definitely bigger than it's like an inch bigger than any book you might put in it, where it's like, you can see here, it would fit basically any magazine size, any book size, and maybe it's only 2 or 3 inches high, and then it's these other lengths, and so it's a pretty big box in terms of length and width, but in terms of thickness, in terms of the height of that box, it's actually pretty small. So I might suggest doing something like that. Think about your products. I would say get like 5 or 10 children's books together, and then play with some boxes. Figure out, you get all your books together. You go to a box store and you grab like 3 of their biggest box sizes, and then you figure out which configuration would kind of work best for you. If we start small and can only use digital, would you suggest when we scale to switch a different type of packaging? How hard is it to switch from one to the other one scaling? Justin's basically asking, he's saying, what if we want to start digital and then we want to go to flexographic? Is that okay? How would we do that? Absolutely, Justin. You can totally do that. It's very, very simple. You'll have your box design already, and so you'll have that same box design. What you'll need to do is you'll need to just focus on your timeline. Make sure you've got enough boxes in stock until you get your next order of custom boxes in. And so if it's, if you're 6 weeks out from being able to do flexographic printing and you need to do a couple more orders of digital printing, I would say plan that out, do a bigger order of digital printing so you can get your prices down now, and then make sure you're communicating with your manufacturer and saying, hey, I've got to hit this next deadline for my next order of 1,500 boxes. Let's make sure that tooling gets created in time. Let's make sure that the production schedule is on time. Let's make sure we have enough time for shipment to me so I can make sure that I can pack my boxes on time so I can ship my boxes on time. So that's the only thing you really need to worry about. There's not going to be any other really big hoops you need to jump through unless your design demands it. So if you started with a really specific, small, highly detailed digital design, Justin, and then you want to go to flexographic, you might have to tweak your design a little bit. And then that's what's going to prevent you from switching really seamlessly. Okay, do you have a source for eco-friendly recycled boxes? Yeah, Stephanie, I do. It's actually a part of Salazar Packaging. If you go to Salazar, it's called GlobeGuard, I believe. You go to his store, it changes your websites to another business, but it's run by the same people. GlobeGuard is some of the best packaging that you can get for recycled stuff. So they're 1% for the Planet members, which I love because they're 1% of all of their sales go to environmental causes. But in addition to that, it's all recycled. It's like locally recycled. It's not like Chinese recycling that's then sent over here or something like that. It's printed with water-based inks. It's a really stand-up green cardboard business. They're based out of the central United States, so they have good central shipping, and so it's not really far from anybody. So it's cheaper to get to you. And they have a lot of good sponsors, not sponsors, but partners. Green America is a big organization that kind of approves green businesses, and it's not super easy to get in Green America. I think you just have to pay and then submit an application, but they're the supplier for Green America, so I think that kind of says a little bit more than just being a Green America business. So I would suggest them. So Rose says your boxes look super detailed. Does that make a huge difference in price? No, it doesn't make a difference in price at all. So with these boxes, what I did is you can see this. So there's white in these designs. This is actually a corrugated box with a white liner. I never used any white ink. It's just an orange ink. And so my outer box has a big flood coat on it. It's this giant flood coat. All this orange ink is all just blared on. And I have the detail is actually the white liner peeking through the orange ink. This makes no difference at all in cost at all, Rose. It's the same stamp. I got to make a stamp regardless. It doesn't matter anything at all. If I got any more detail than this, then they would probably tell me you need to get digital or flex or litho label printing. So it doesn't really affect cost unless it affects the quality of output of that design. So Rose says how beat up to the boxes? Oh, how beat up the boxes get in the process? If that's in reference of shipping, Rose, mine don't get too beat up, but they are shipping boxes, so they might get a couple scuffs on them. But generally, they're pretty well taken care of. I also use the USPS, which is a great carrier. I find them to be one of the best carriers versus UPS. FedEx is actually really good too, except they're pretty expensive. DHL, for example, your boxes will get destroyed. They'll get covered in dirt and stuff like that. I used DHL for a couple months with Conscious Box when we're shipping out 30,000 boxes a month, and consistently there would be hundreds of boxes, like more than just a simple margin of error, that were just destroyed and scuffed up and just looked really bad. So Scott says, we have a larger box size for our product. Would you recommend doing a digital print at Packlane at $281 per box to build a brand to look professional, or bite the bullet on a plate cost and do flexographic for small quantities since we're in startup mode? Scott, if I were you, I would do what I did because I'm me. And I bit that bullet and I said, I'm going to make this business work. I'm going to launch with a couple hundred subscribers, and I'm going to work my butt off to get as many people I can buying this box. And I'm going to just do flexographic because it's going to save me more money down the line, because I don't want to spend more than $1.20 on a box. And I need to place an order for 2,000 boxes. And so that's what I did. And I put it on my credit card. My business just paying me back over time. And it was worth it to me to do that. But every business is different. So look at your unit economics. Look at how your pre-launch is doing, how your startup mode is doing, and look at what you think you're going to need. If you get 2,000 boxes, I would say you're going to want to use at least 200 to 300 boxes per month, and so you have 6 or 7 months worth of boxes at least, with room to grow. And so if you feel like that's the mark you're going to hit, then that's when it makes sense to do a flexographic order. If you think you're only going to be doing about 20 or 30 boxes for your first couple months, I would say go with the digital, but yes, it's different for each one. Cassandra says this oh, sweet, Cassandra, you're welcome. She just said, I want to thank you for your time, and to say I can't wait to see everything to make and to excel in. Thank you again. Also, Cassandra, I think all of us are very excited for all of our designs. I'm definitely excited to see what you guys are all working on. Please, 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 let me just say this right now. If you are working on designs, please join the Subscription School Facebook group and shoot your designs here, and people will give you such good feedback about it. There's been so many people who have got their packaging. I've watched their packaging improve leaps and bounds by being in this group. So if you guys are going to be working on this soon, post it in here. Even mention this webinar, that'd be cool too. And just let us know. Tag me, and I'll give you guys some advice. This stuff I think is always flooding, so it's always best to tag my name. So let's jump back here. So Carmen says, and I know that we're going over, but I'm going to answer the rest of the questions for you guys. So Carmen says, how about products that will require inserts to hold them in place during shipment? Good question, Carmen. You might have to get some. You might have to get some extra packing material to hold things together. There's other things that you can do with custom packaging where you actually have, let's say, for example, you always send out like 3 little bottles of olive oil because you have an olive oil subscription. You could get a packing insert that actually is shaped to those sizes of the bottle, so you know that they're always super comfy and fit. It's like a mold almost where you can just push the bottle into. So depending on what your products are, if you have a consistently the same item with the same dimensions, you could use something like that. Otherwise, get creative with packing material, bubble wrap, craft paper, that type of thing. Is your box considered a 5-flap? Thank you. My box has a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 flaps. I'm not sure what it's considered. I actually have never heard that before. 5-flap. Mine's it's a fold and tuck mailer. So not mailer, but a fold and tuck box. So it's a top folding box. The top part here with the circle here is what folds into the box. And I fold the sides and flip over the parts where the sunflowers are on that orange design on the right, and then I push it all together and it becomes a little box. So I'm not sure what it's considered. I'll have to ask my manufacturer. Suzanne says, will you do a webinar in the future that discusses packaging inside the box, like tissue, stickers, postcards, and freebies? Yes, I will, Suzanne. I will definitely do that. Let me make a note of that right now. Okay. So Vincent says, hey Jesse, do you have any good info on finding good stamps? Vincent, I do. Let me show you right here. hrsco.com. These are who I get my stamps from. I don't use stamps very often, but I have a couple other projects I work on that I use stamps for. They're based out of North Hollywood, California. So they might not be closest to you, but stamps aren't super expensive. And if you tell them, you can actually probably tell these people, tell them like, say, hey, Jesse referred me. Can I get a little discount or free expedited shipping or something like that? And they might do something for you. I would say for self-inking stamp, that's about 2.5 inches wide by an inch tall or something like that. You're probably looking around like $30. For a plain stamp with an ink pad, you're probably looking at about 15 to $20 depending on the size. So I use these guys for stamps. There's a lot of probably local stamp manufacturers in your town, so you can always just do that. You can always just do that. Find someone local, and it's save you on shipping costs. But those are the guys who I use. They're pretty good over there. Meredith says, can you say again which is best for quantities of 100 or less? Meredith, 100 or less. I would still say go with digital, I guess, at that point. But if you need 100 each month, you might try to find a box manufacturer who will do like 500 for you, and then you have 5 months worth of boxes. If you can kind of finagle your finances for that to work, then that price can go down significantly if you can just get to Flexographic from digital. So I would say for quantities of 100 or less, go with digital, but really try to look at your books and see if you could afford doing a larger run. Okay, so Justin, you asked about a Launch Rock question. I'm gonna come back to that question so we can just finish up these packaging ones and get these questions knocked out, and then I'll come back to you. Do more companies design/print both sides, inside or out? Yeah, Sarah, most people do inside and out. Let me just we got some just kind of comments here. Oh yeah, let me put back this action item list for you. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Okay, so let's start from that to clean up some of those comments. Did you do any market research to test your brand and design beforehand, before printing? Stephanie, I didn't do any market research in terms of showing them the design, but I had done a pre-launch already, and I had about 800 emails. And so I definitely did a lot of brand validation before then. Where do you get the molds from? Who makes them? I don't actually I've never had molds made, so I'm not really sure. It'd be a good question for your box manufacturer. So whoever you use from the Subscription School resources page, Carmen, maybe just ask them. I'm sure a lot of them do it. I've never ordered them myself though, but I have seen them in subscription boxes, and I imagine that the manufacturer is also the one who would do something like that. Do you put your personal address for the stamp? If you mean for like the shipping label, Rose, no, I have a business address that I use, but I would have used my personal address beforehand, sure. Suzanne says, if you want to know how it's affected during shipping, send yourself a box, and then you can see how things hold up. Good suggestion. As a return address. Oh yes, Rose, I see that we just answered that. Meredith asks, do you have any recommendations for wax, stamps, or stickers? You know who I've been checking out? I've been talking with these guys pretty recently. Lumi. Lumi has a pretty cool different options. They've got a lot of different types of packaging that you can use. We've got custom packing tape, drawstring paper, cotton bags, rubber stamps. They have here masking tape. A bunch of different stuff that they have. So this is a cool resource. But for wax, not really. I don't really have anybody for wax. I would maybe ask your manufacturer. Otherwise, maybe try buying it in bulk online. And I'm not sure how that whole process works. Like the way Nomad Coffee does it, I'm sure they just have like a red wax thing. They just are stamping it. So you probably buy the stamp from a manufacturer like this, and then you just buy the actual wax from a wholesaler or something like that. Would probably be the cheapest way to do it. Jeff says, wait a minute, so that white square in the middle of your box is the shipping label? It's right on top? Doesn't that take away from the look of your box? Maybe I'm not envisioning the label properly. No, it is right on top of my box. I don't think that, a lot of people always ask me that. They're like, well, don't you think this kind of takes away from the experience? And honestly, no, I don't think that it really does. I mean, the top of the box is what I want them to, I want a couple things on the top of the box. The reason why I want to have their name and their address is because it makes it clear to them that that's theirs. Obviously, it immediately makes it identifiable for them. The real experience that people are going to be cherishing is going to be inside the box, and so the whole scene I did inside the box is, I think, a little bit more interesting than the scene I did outside the box for the design. There's even a maze in one of the corners of my boxes. But I think that given the size labels that I use, it felt like the best place. I didn't really want to have a big message on the top of my box, and I wanted it to just be kind of a simple top. And so just kind of putting their name on the first thing that they see is they see this bright orange box, they see their name, and I think that gets them excited. I don't think it really takes away from the experience because a lot of people always mention how much they love the packaging that they get. And like I said, when they open up the box and they tear off the packing list and they see the little bird tweeting at them and they see this big tree that goes down to the root of the box, and then they're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole little scene. They see the little foxes and the flowers and the butterflies on the inside, and they're like, wait, can I open this box? And they open the box and they see these little comments, these little quotes, and all these different little things and a little maze to do. I think it gives them a whole experience that inside the box that I think is more important to me. But I think it's a good question, and I think that there could be better placement. Definitely, I've definitely kind of thought about that before and been like, oh, I wonder if there's a better place for me to put it on the side or something like that. But anyways, moving on. So do you know of any packaging companies in the resources that ship to Canada? I don't know anybody that well, they all probably ship to Canada, to answer your question, but I don't know of any that are based in Canada. I've been looking for a couple different solutions, but I've got a couple handles on potential manufacturers, but I'm waiting to hear back with some comments from merchants who have used them or not. I don't really want to recommend them until I know if they're any good. One of the things that I suggest is, especially if the bulk of your customers are in the United States, is to work with a manufacturer and fulfillment center here, like Northwest Paper Box, because then you can have them print your boxes. They could ship you a small quantity of them for the ones for your Canadian customers, and then they could fulfill and ship the remaining boxes for your U.S. customers. So that would be a kind of an interim solution. Stephanie says, would you consider mailing your box inside a priority mail padded rate envelope? Wouldn't it be cheaper this way? Yeah, no, totally, Stephanie. That's a totally great idea for an alternative, is by using a USPS priority mailbox or padded envelope or something like that. I don't think that the experience is quite as nice, and it's I think it would just kind of take away from it. If you mean putting my custom box inside of one of those padded flat rate envelopes, that actually wouldn't be cheaper for me because of the size of the box. the cheapest postage that I can get is by using the USPS cubic shipping, and that's because this box is not a small box; it's about the size of a shoebox, and so it's pretty large. And the rates that I can get with a cubic contract are better than what I can get through flat rate or anything else. But that doesn't mean it's going to be the same for you. So maybe that is a better idea for you, Stephanie, if your box is smaller or something like that. All right, Maura, thank you so much. I'm excited to share those with you guys too. I see. Okay, Stephanie. So let me know. I mean, if you think that would be a better solution for a different size box, I think that'd be a really interesting idea. I mean, it definitely keep the design nicer. And I think they're free too. I think the USPS just gives you those things for free since you buy the postage. So it's definitely an interesting idea. I like that idea. Dina says, what is the size of the shipping label area on your box? These are 4x6 labels. So they're 4 inches wide by 6 inches long. All right, Justin, let me jump on your landing page questions. So his first question was, landing page question, what's the goal for emails during your landing page campaign, and how long should I run it? I would say run it for 30 to 60 days and aim for at least 2,000 emails or so. That's a pretty big number. I've had a lot of people tell me, like, Jesse, that's too high, that's too high. But if you aim for that, you'll get somewhere below it and maybe above it. But I would say aim high, and you could launch with 1,000 emails. I think 500 or 1,000 is essential, bare minimum. But if you can do more than that, that's much better. Justin's second question was, I've been having trouble with my landing page and like your subscription school email format where I get confirmation emails. LaunchDark doesn't integrate with my email system when someone signs up to my email list. I was curious what you send to send confirmation emails. Yeah, Justin, so they do not integrate with a mail service like MailChimp. What you have to do is each day or every other day, download the list of people who have entered their email, manually upload them to your list in MailChimp if you use MailChimp, and then they'll be put through your automation campaign that you use in MailChimp. So that's what I would do. Vincent said, can you put the assignment slide back up? Yeah, let me put this up here. That's the end of the questions. I think I've got a couple more questions for you. I totally forgot about this. So I'm going to put up a couple polls really quickly. It looks like about half of everybody is left, so we don't really have too many people left to vote. But if you guys could just throw in an answer really quick. I want to know what stage you guys are at. This is helpful for me to understand who is here today and what you guys are doing and how I can make this presentation better in the future. So just leaving a quick answer. And I'm going to do one more poll, and I will be super appreciative if you guys also do that with me. Okay, we got about 80% of voted. I'm going to close this now. Last poll. Let me ask you this: how important do you think packaging is? And while this poll is going through, I want to mention to you guys too, if you're concerned about financial stuff, I know that I said I was going to talk about that, and I haven't really yet. Check out the webinar, how to launch the right way to launch a subscription business. It's in our video section and on our YouTube channel. There's a way to launch your business especially if you're doing a pre-launch, that allows you to make enough money early on to almost afford custom boxes from the start. It requires 100, 200, 300 customers on month one, but it's an easy way to reinvest profit immediately back into improving your business and improving your product. So check out the webinar, The Right Way to Launch a Subscription Business. That is on Subscription School's video section and on youtube.com/subscription school. All right, everybody, thank you guys so much for attending today. This recording will be available on Subscription School and on YouTube. Check out the Subscription School Facebook group. We'll see you all soon. And let me know if you guys have any other questions or thoughts. There'll be a questionnaire after you guys leave today. And give me some feedback. What do you guys want to learn next? Was this helpful? How can I make this presentation better? Thank you guys again so much for attending. And have a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend ahead. See you guys later. See you guys later. See you guys later. See you guys later. See you guys later.